So part two, when we're speaking about, finding peace and happiness and escaping much of the drama of being a human being, well, we can speak until we're blue in the face to young people, most young people, and it will be to no avail. You see, it's a certain trajectory of a human being from the cradle to the grave, and this spiritual stuff, the real spiritual stuff, people, I'm not just speaking about, crystals, candles and a bit of meditation. I'm talking about getting involved with spirits. That's the spiritual. And when you do this via your psychedelics or out-of-body experiences or any other phenomenological access point, then you know that this is a spiritual dimension. And we also know that we are spirit having a human experience. But for people who haven't had the experiences, it just doesn't mean anything, does it? And it's boring and pointless. And this is why, probably lots of my older viewers, which are tuned in for the old variety of video, and now there's a new awakened grave. I mean, I don't even know whether to change that name, because the awakened brave was very befitting in relation to astral projection, into the consumption of psychedelics, world travel, and delving into all this various stuff, and even during the whole COVID crisis, being brave enough to take on the United States of America, to take on their government, and to not accept their jurisdiction and their manipulation over me as a sovereign being. It took me 3 months solid, didn't it? Some of you will remember. I was on that every single day. I put a lot of effort into that, and eventually I won. But all that sort of stuff, for satiating the ego, really, stamping my feet and spitting my dummy out, they're not doing this to me. Well, if you don't want to be subject to their rules, then don't play their silly games. And so I no longer want to go on long hauls travel, because I can't stand that farming. I've seen it come, people. In my, let's say, 45 years of world travel, I've seen massive changes. And in the early days, you just show up to the airport like 45 minutes before check-in closes, with your bag, sling it on the conveyor belt, and you just walk straight through. Now there's a whole load of monkey business going on, and the whole extortion of everything being 10 times the price as soon as you get into an airport. It's you would think it's run by the mafia, and it is, because where's the justification for things being 10 times more expensive in an airport? There's no justification. It doesn't cost businesses any more to sell it there than it would anywhere else. But because they have a captured audience, they effectively, there's a gauntlet that we have to run through, and They even prevent you from taking your own water, your own sandwiches there, because you're not allowed to have any open containers. And so when you go through, then they've got you again. And, you know, even down to, like, you know, all of your cosmetics, your toiletries, you know, for women especially, you know, bit of perfume and bit of, you know, anything that's in a tube, any of this thing. And so they just want you to throw all that away. So I won't partake in that. You know, you see, the whole thing about when we become sovereign, well, it's all well and good being sovereign in a world which is owned by someone. Every single place on the planet, there'll be some nation which would lay claim to it. And they'll say it's government land, if it's not private. And then we go, well, you know, I want to go off grid. Well, you can only go off grid if you buy your own land. And then even there's lots of rules and regulations coming into place now whereby you're not allowed to grow your own vegetables. You're not allowed to keep your own chickens and produce your own eggs. You're not allowed to do so many of these things. And so, I don't know where the world's going, people. For people that fight it. Because the frontiers are becoming less and less, which you can actually go to, you know, emancipate yourselves from it. So I was speaking to somebody the other day out on one of my walks, and he knew all about the certain ramifications and connotations to the recent injection thing. And yet he still took 5. And he just says, fuck it. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. It's only a dream in any case. I don't give a fuck. He says, I've just got to accept it. I'm a sheeple. I always have been. And if they say that you got to queue up here and you got to do this and you got to do that, I'm always first in line. And I'm like, why is that? What level of mentality is behind that? And it's like, well, I just follow rules. You know, I know that they're doing things here and it's not necessarily in our best interest and it's most certainly not healthy and this, that and the other, but they just go and do it. And I've known people who have well been long in the tooth with all this conspiracy stuff. And they've listened to a lot of very professional people telling us why we shouldn't be taking that stuff. And yet they just run down to the nearest centre and they take it. And then they hear stories about people having this and having that and all the other things, and then they go back for the second one. And then they go back for the third one. So somebody I used to speak to years ago, into all of this stuff, very spiritual, he would take all different sorts of entheogens. He'd be looking always for the next thing which would give him a different state of consciousness. And he'd always be speaking about these things in his videos. And when the old COVID thing came about, he was there. And myself and a few other people who knew him was like, that don't make sense. What's all that about? It's completely contrary to what you should be doing and what we know. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, but every time I was going by one of these centres, then I was just kind of like getting drawn to it. There's something inside me which was just drawing me to it. And then he took the first one and he said, well, you know, if I don't die within the next 4 weeks, I'll take the second one. And then his missus has got major complications due to those things. And there's somebody I know who had a boss, who's got a boss, and the boss's wife took one variety. She was paralysed for 6 weeks, bedridden, and then she was umming and ahhing with her husband about whether to take that one again or whether to try and take another one. She took another one and nothing else happened yet. And this boss, he's a mask wearer everywhere, and he started all this working from home business, and people have never gone back. And even when they go out onto a set, it's just as a precaution, just to keep doing that, keep wearing the masks. And it's like, well, what is it in these people? You know, who would get paralysed? What would be going through your mind when you're lying in bed paralysed from that stuff? It'd be absolutely terrifying. But it wasn't terrifying enough compared to getting the flu, getting this cough and losing your taste. It didn't even compare to the terror of that. Or is it something else? Is it just that these people are just absolute sheep and they are just going to comply with everything, and they take the greatest of comfort from complying? I think that's it. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of when things fly in the face of rational thought and health.
Thank you.
And you do something like that and you just risk it. And people go, how many people do we know will go into these centres and going, fingers crossed? Really? Fingers crossed that the face wouldn't fall down, they wouldn't get a stroke, they wouldn't get paralysed, they wouldn't get a heart attack, all these sort of things. As opposed to what? What was the risk? And then, you know, people come out jubilant, you know, and they'd wear the badge, wouldn't they? You know, I've had my... I think they're elated because they actually survived without getting any of those things that are come about as a result of taking those things. And for any of you now that, you know, have not been listening to my videos for a long time and you're thinking, why am I speaking so cryptically? Because if you speak about this stuff, they'll just take your channel down in an instant. And I've had too many channels lost to that level of manipulation and well, just outright bullying, fascist tactics that you can't ever say anything against the state. So those of you now that are watching my videos and you look in and you see how I live and, you know, all the things I've done in these 14 years of making videos, travelled many paths, and now I'm here living a sedentary life. I'll never drive again. Well, I never say never, but I don't think I would ever drive again. And if I ever needed to drive again, then I'd just get a driver. If I needed to buy a car and needed to go somewhere, then I'd hire a driver. I just wouldn't get involved with that. And I'd have to have a very good reason as to why I'd be getting on the motorway to go anywhere. And so just having all our time. You know, when we listen to people like I mentioned Robert Greene, who he's doing all these videos, and what he's saying is it's so exceedingly elementary. He wrote this book, 48 Rules of Power, and one of the videos he was doing currently is kind of like you know, if people start bullying you and start trying to manipulate you, just say no. You know, you can just say no, I am not doing that. And then there might be consequences, but if you're prepared to stand by your conviction, and if many people did this, then they'd have to change their tactics. And I'm like, you really have to tell that to people? You really have to say, you can say no, you know? Yes, we do. And I'm struggling with getting my head around it because I've never been that sort of a person. But when people, they're born and they go to kindergarten, then they go to primary school, then they go to junior school, and then they go to senior school, and then they go to college, and then university, and they go through all of these forelock-touching institutions. Yes, sir, no, oh, yes, sir, without a doubt, sir. And it becomes very, very difficult to start saying no, because they've never said it. They've never said no. And if they start to think about no, or if someone says to them, say no, every bone and cell in their body starts to tremble, because that's something that is completely alien to them. Say no to institutions, to governments, to power sources. It isn't possible for many people. And that's the thing. And so when he speaks so rudimentary, I'm like, hello? But he knows where they're coming from, because he's been involved with all that stuff all his life. He's gone through the universities and all that sort of stuff, and that's why he wrote this 48 Rules of Power, because he was tired of being subject to powerful people, but it never prevented him from towing the line. And he even said that he's, an agreeable sort of person. He just will agree, just to avoid conflict. And when you look at him, he's a frail little flinching sort of person. You know. And then I was watching a discussion with Jordan Peterson and one of the liberal leftists in America. And Peterson's like trying to work out the mental state of these leftists, and he's got loads of questions why they're like this and why they're doing this and why do they want to bring the world into, you know, an abject state of mediocrity. And the people that he's been speaking to, you see that they're the weediest and skinniest, little white complexion and skinny neck, goofy teeth and all this stuff. Nerds. They were the nerds of the nerds at school. And they got knocked around every school they ever went to, from beginning to end. They were never first in the queue for anything. They were always last. And now, in government, they've got their opportunity to get their own back. And that's all these people you see. You see all these people that maybe have been, you know, abused as kids, and they've been bullied at school, and they've never got their own way. They were never good looking. They were never strong. They were never intelligent. But now, you know, in numbers, they can, you know, put the world to rights. And then they want to attack all these people which have got the remotest bit of power. You know, they just want to break down all power. And this guy that Peterson was speaking to, he was just like, just shaking and putting his and saying, well, when he was at university, he had no confidence at all, and you know, the people, you know, that they'd be more assertive and they'd get to the front of the queue and they'd get their own way, and I was always last, and and it's like this. And like Peterson should have said, well, just because you've been afflicted for being a fucking degenerate, weedy little fucking fuck all your life, you know, don't try and inflict that on the whole world. Can't you see? Because then the whole world will be weedy, scared little fucks like you. I mean, that's the sickness of it. Because they've been afflicted in such a way, and it's made them weak and detestable by society, then they want to impose what they've become onto everybody. And it's a scourge. And Peterson's fighting against it vehemently. You know, they'll win for a little while. And then they'll get crushed again. Because people will realise that that level of weediness doesn't serve anybody. If they've crushed the spirit in every single person in schools and universities, who are the ones that are going to be leaders? Who are the ones that are going to be self-assertive and, you know, confident in what they say and what they believe and what they know, you know, and then want to show other people and lead them into the promised land? Well, these people, you know, they're not going to be around. All you're going to get is a bunch of mollusks with no backbones. You know, the weediest little nerds in school, they're the ones that are going to be in the positions of power. And that's like when you look at these politicians, you just know that they were the dudes that you taxed in the tuck shop line. You know, when I was at school, you know, I had an entourage with every school I ever went to. The self-assertive, tough kids that didn't do their homework and, you know, rebelled against everything and wanted to do things their own way. And the vast majority of these people, they go on to make their own businesses, and they don't need this bullshit that they try to indoctrinate you with at school. And I came out of school with not a single qualification, you know, and I did quite all right, thank you very much. And I've known lots of people who have done quite all right. But it's the nerdy little ones that, you know, you used to tax in the tuck shop, you know, for a few crisps. You walk down the line, crisps, tax, have it, crisps. And it's the case of, well, if they stood for it, then, you know, you tax them. The odd one, you know, even though he's a little nerdy geek, you know, he'd have something to say, and he'd put up a bit of a fight, and I like that. All right, this one's fucking got a spirit, man. Come on, do you want to be in my gang? You know, I'll find something for you to do. And then it's kind of like, all right. And then, like, you just give them stuff to do, and then they go and do it. It's like, go and nick those crisps from that fucking shelf over there in that shop and bring them out to us. The corruption of youth. Anyway, I'm cooking roast chicken tonight, guys and girls. And the reason why I'm cooking a whole roast chicken is because, first and foremost, I love the whole roast chicken, all the fat and the skin and all that, but I want to boil down the carcass and make stock, because I'm going to make another one of those amazing sirloin beef stews. Wow, that was just something else. Go use that, guys.